brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of Mama Africa, I ask you today, are you ready to hear a truth that may offend the comfortable and comfort the offended? Are you ready to listen, not with your ears, but with your conscience? Because what I say today is not for applause, it is not for popularity, it is for posterity. Today I speak not of a man alone, but of a movement, not of one heartbeat, but of a rising thunder, and that thunder bears a name, Ibrahim Traoré. They have tried to label him, to silence him, to bend him, but they forget that fire does not negotiate with the wind. They forget that history has never remembered the cowards, but it has always carved in stone the names of the courageous. So if you have come here to be entertained, leave now. But if you have come to awaken the sleeping lions in your blood, stay. If you have come to feel the fire that refuses to die in the hearts of Africa's children, listen. If you have come to witness the voice of a generation that refuses to kneel, then tighten your hearts, open your minds, and prepare your soul. Because after today you will not walk the same, you will not think the same. And by the end of this speech, the world will know that Ibrahim Traoré is not just a leader. He is a storm, and the storm is not coming. The storm is heresy, say courage is rare, they say leadership is lonely, and they say truth is dangerous, but what they do not say is that sometimes all three collide in the heart of one man, and when that happens the world is forced to pause. Ibrahim Traoré is not just leading Burkina Faso, he is challenging an entire global order that has fed on African weakness, and called it diplomacy that has exploited African silence, and called it cooperation that has stolen African futures, and branded it investment. This man has chosen a road many feared to walk. He has chosen to lead not with permission, but with principle, not with fear, but with fire, and in doing so he is redefining what it means to be a leader in the heart of Africa. When the world demanded compliance, he chose resistance. When foreign powers knocked with bribes wrapped in aid, he shut the door. When they whispered deals in rooms, he spoke loudly in public halls. And when they tried to remind him of consequences, he reminded them of history, because leadership that bows to threats is not leadership. It is occupation, and leadership that fears to lose position cannot claim to represent the people. Ibrahim Traoré has not to maintain the status quo, he has come to break it. He has not come to please the West or East, he has come to serve the will of his people. And this courage is the kind that threatens global thrones, because it does not come with a price tag. Look at the boldness with which he speaks, the clarity with which he addresses injustice, the discipline with which he moves his army, and the vision with which he sees Africa's future. This is not noise, this is not luck, this is not rebellion for rebellion's sake. This is leadership forged in the fire of suffering, matured in the knowledge of betrayal, sharpened by the urgency of a continent that can no longer wait for permission to rise. Ibrahim Traoré is not just leading a country, he is inspiring a continent. He is not just responding to crisis, he is awakening consciousness. And that is why they fear him, not because he is violent, but because he is unbending, not because he has weapons, but because he has conviction, not because he seeks war, but because he demands justice. Africa has seen presidents who looked away when their people suffered, who smiled before cameras while their nations bled, who sat in palaces while their children drank dirty water. But Ibrahim Traoré has rejected the comfort of complacency. He wears the uniform not as decoration, but as declaration that leadership is not ceremony. It is service. He speaks not in diplomatic riddles, but in clear, defiant tones that say, we are no longer your pawns. He walks among his soldiers, not to be praised, but to understand and to remind them that they are not tools of terror, but defenders of dignity. This is the kind of leadership that rewrites narratives and restores dignity. And yes, it is dangerous, but what dream was ever achieved without danger? What freedom was ever gained without risk? He is young, yes, but age does not define wisdom, and gray hair does not always mean great thinking. There are elders who have sold Africa for decades and youth who are now standing to reclaim it. Ibrahim Traoré represents that rising spirit that says we will not inherit chains, we will not inherit fear, we will not inherit fake peace that feeds on injustice. His courage is a mirror to all leaders who pretend not to see his courage. is a challenge to all governments who serve foreign interests. His courage is a signal to Africans everywhere that our chains are breakable, that our voices are valid. Our future is not written in Paris or Washington, but in Ouagadougou, in Accra, in Dar es Salaam, in Kampala, in the hearts of the brave. And make no mistake, they will come for him. They already are, because courage that refuses to kneel is a threat to power, and vision that refuses to sell out is a threat to exploitation. But the more they try to silence him, the louder his example becomes. The more they try to isolate him, the more Africa embraces him, because real leadership does not seek applause. It awakens responsibility, it demands sacrifice, and it refuses to die quietly. Ibrahim Traoré has reminded us that Africa does not need saviors from abroad. It needs servants from within, and in that spirit we must protect the dream, protect the voice, and protect the man. They have always told the African youth to wait. They said leadership is a gray-haired privilege. They said mature decades, and not in vision. They said young people must learn to follow before they can be trusted to lead. But what they never said is that while we waited, our future was stolen. While we waited, our nations were plundered. While we waited, those in power built fences, not bridges. They spoke of while delivering excuses, and they demanded respect while practicing corruption. But now the wait is over, because the youth of Africa are no longer asking for permission. They are taking responsibility. And no one symbolizes this generational awakening more than Ibrahim Traoré. And with a title, he is the proof that youth and leadership are not opposites. He is the declaration that age does not guarantee wisdom, and that passion combined with principle is more powerful than any textbook on governance. Ibrahim Traoré rose not through wealth, not through foreign sponsorship, but through the fire of national crisis. And in the face of that fire he did not run, he stood. And in standing he reminded every young African that leadership is not about the comfort of chairs, but the courage to change. And now the world watches in disbelief. That such resolve, such clarity, such defiance could come from one so young. But that is their error. They judged our youth by stereotypes, not by spirit. They expected our young men to dream of visas, not of victory. They expected our young women to chase trends, not transformation. That in every African child lies the memory of struggle and the hope of restoration. Ibrahim Traoré is not an exception. He is the evidence of what happens when a generation refuses to bow to history and chooses instead to rewrite it. His rise has sparked something irreversible. It is no longer about one nation. It is about a continental statement that the youth are not just leaders of tomorrow. They are the rescuers of today. Look at how he speaks with urgency, not arrogance, with vision, not vanity, with clarity, not confusion. He does not beg for credit. Action, and his presence is not an accident. It is the consequence of a generation tired of betrayal and hungry for dignity. The youth of Africa are not naive. They know the risks, they see the challenges, but they are no longer afraid of the cost of courage. They are afraid of the price of are afraid of another decade wasted on failed promises, on puppet leaders, and on policies written in foreign languages. Ibrahim Traoré gives voice to that fear and then transforms it into fuel. And let it be known that it is not only the enemies of Africa who fear this youth, it is also the old guards within, who have built kingdoms on the backs of the poor, who have drained national wealth to fill foreign accounts, who speak of legacy while leaving only ruin. They tremble not because the youth are violent, but because the youth are united, not because they shout, but because they organize, not because they disrupt, but because they build. This new generation understands that leadership is not about copying colonial models. It is about creating systems rooted in African values, driven by integrity and powered by a people first philosophy, and Ibrahim Traoré is walking proof of that possibility. He wakes something ancient in our bones, something buried under decades of defeat, something silenced by the weight of lies. He makes the young African believe again that we can lead, that we can protect our resources, that we can stand for justice, and that we can speak to the world not as beggars, but as equals, and this is why he is unstoppable, not because he has an army behind him, but because he has a generation rising with him, and the world cannot fight a million dreams rising the same way. They cannot stop the wind, they cannot cage the rain, and they cannot silence a strength. So to every young person watching, to every student, to every laborer, to every dreamer who has been told to wait, I say this: the waiting is over. Leadership does not belong to the old, it belongs to the bold. And Ibrahim Traoré is your signal that your time is now, your voices are valid, and your power is real, and that is why the time for fear is over. They do not fear the man, they fear the message. They do not fear the face, they fear the force. They do not fear Ibrahim Traoré because he commands troops. They fear him because he commands truth. This truth is dangerous. They fear him not because he seeks war, but because he refuses to kneel. They fear him not because he speaks loudly, but because his words carry the weight of a people who have been silent for too long. They fear him not because he disrupts order. Order they created, and they know that a man who cannot be bought cannot be controlled, and a people who stand behind him cannot be broken. When you reject their aid with strings, they call you radical. When you nationalize your resources, they call you unstable. When you refuse, they call you a threat. And yet the real threat has always been their greed, their hypocrisy, and their determination to keep Africa as a continent of dependency and division. They fear Ibrahim Traoré because he has exposed this truth without apology, and because in doing so he is trained to forget its own power. He is not their creation, and that is why they fear him. He is not their student, and that is why they cannot predict him. He is not their servant, and that is why they cannot silence him. They have tried every weapon: disinformation, sabotage, and yet the more they try to shrink him, the larger his image becomes, not because he is a celebrity, but because he has become a mirror that reflects what Africa was always meant to be: free, proud, determined, and unafraid. He has proven that leadership or begging for loans. It is about protecting dignity, defending sovereignty, and prioritizing the people above all else. And for that reason he has become an enemy, not to Africa, but to those who have profited from Africa's pain. They cannot understand why he refuses their invitations, their motives, why he exposes their deals and challenges their agendas. They are shocked by his discipline, his clarity, his refusal to be distracted by handshakes and cameras. They cannot handle a leader who is not desperate for validation, who is not addicted to applause, principles for praise. He is a disruption because he reminds other leaders of what they were supposed to be, and he reminds the people of what they must demand. And in a world where controlled narratives keep oppression alive, an uncontrolled voice becomes a revolution. Because they cannot call him corrupt, they call him authoritarian. Because they cannot call him incompetent, they invent stories. Because the truth threatens their empire. But the more they lie, the more the people listen, because there is a sound that cannot be denied. It is the sound of a generation awakening, and it is the sound of a leader who refuses to betray his people for political comfort. Ibrahim Traoré is not following a global trend, he is breaking it. And that is what they fear most. They fear a leader who sets a new standard. Inspire 10 and 10 can inspire 100, and then the system they built begins to tremble. They ask who is funding him, but they should ask what is fueling him. They ask who is guiding him, but they should ask what is driving him. And the answer is simple. He is driven by the urgent hunger of a betrayed people, by the memory of fallen heroes, and by the desire to live in a land that no longer bows to foreign masters. He is dangerous to them because he believes Africa can stand without their aid, without their approval, without their chains. Playbook, because it is the beginning of independence and the end of manipulation. They want to isolate him, but in doing so they have amplified him. They want to threaten him, but in doing so they have revealed their fear. They want to silence him, but in doing so they have made him loud. Watches, because deep down they know that Ibrahim Traoré is not just speaking to Burkina Faso. He is speaking to the soul of Africa. He is saying that the time of puppets is over, that the age of begging is done, and that the future of Africa will no longer be negotiated behind. The revolution was buried. They thought the spirit of Sankara was silenced. They thought the pages of history had closed on Africa's quest for dignity. But they were wrong, because the revolution was not dead. It was waiting for breath, waiting for courage, waiting for kneel at the gates of foreign empires, waiting for a voice that could not be bought, a heart that could not be broken, a will that could not be bent. And now that voice has spoken, now that fire has returned, and it carries the name of Ibrahim Traoré, not as an individual, but as a continuation, echo of all the dreams that were once crushed, and all the battles that were once betrayed. This revolution is not made of bull. It is made of belief. It is not fueled by hatred. It is fueled by hope. It is not led from the shadows. It is carried in the light. And it says with clarity, no longer accept crumbs from a table it built. It says we are no longer interested in being seen. We are interested in being sovereign. And it demands not sympathy, but solidarity, not pity, but partnership, not aid, but respect. Ibrahim Traoré is not building statues, selling slogans. He is crafting substance. He is not pretending to be a leader for cameras. He is living the sacrifice of leadership daily. And that is why the revolution is not about speeches. It is about service, not about uniforms. It is about unity, not about headlines. It is about healing. A path that many feared to follow, a path soaked in the blood of martyrs and littered with the warnings of history. And yet he walks not in arrogance, but in honor, not with entitlement, but with urgency, because he understands that revolutions are not comfortable. They are not celebrated. They are not sponsored by global institutions. They are born in pain and fed by purpose, and sustained by a people who refuse to give up. He is building a revolution where the youth no longer dream of exile, but of excellence, where the farmers are no longer left behind, where soldiers defend, but nations, where policies are not imported but inspired by the people's real needs. The revolution is seen in the villages where schools are rising instead of shacks. It is heard in the speeches where truth replaces excuses. It is felt in the streets where hope is returning slowly, but try to reduce it to rebellion. They will try to define it through their lenses. They will try to silence it with strategies. But they will fail, because this revolution is spiritual. It is continental. It is moral. It is generational. And it is rooted in the undeniable truth to be free to choose its destiny, to guard its wealth, and to celebrate its own heroes without apology. They said the revolution ended decades ago. But they forgot revolutions do not die. They retreat, they recharge, they remember. And now it remembers who it is and who betrayed it. Ibrahim Traoré has chosen to defend it, and he has chosen to do so not as a savior, but as a servant, not as a dictator, but as a defender, not as a performer, but as a protector. And it is not easy, it is not popular, it is not safe, but it is right, and that is the only compass. Watching when children are hoping, when the land is weeping, and when the ancestors are listening. This revolution is not about revenge, it is about restoration. It is not a call to war, it is a call to wake up, to rise up, to own up, and to stand up. And the footsteps have begun, the march has started.